I feel like I've really enjoyed some international horror movies in the last couple years. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I don't know if it's because maybe there's a bit of a filter and I'm only getting in this country some of the best, or if they're just maybe more closely in line with what I like. Tough to really say, but there's been a lot of them in the last couple years that I've really been a big fan of. So is this one of them? Huesera is a 2022 horror movie about a woman, after getting pregnant, begins to experience visions of a strange entity that torments her. Now, in the short time that I've been doing this channel, I found that this type of a movie is the hardest to talk about. Basically because of how it rides the line between horror and drama. Now, don't get me wrong, I love character drama in horror movies, and I think that makes the most memorable and compelling stories. But when that drama sort of works opposite of the horror instead of in tandem with it, it does get a little tougher. I mean, horror movies, in my opinion, are always better when they infuse subtextual elements or themes into their stories. I mean, Dawn of the Dead was about consumerism. I mean, The Babadook was about unprocessed grief. It Follows about the stigmas around promiscuity and STDs. The trick here is to make it work on the surface without that subtext, which then allows for a more rewarding experience when you dig deeper and discover it either first time through or in multiple viewings. What makes this movie harder is that its subtext or theme is required to shift into its main storyline about halfway through. And so in essence, it's shining a spotlight on its subtextual element, which then stops it from being subtext. It also has the distinction of stopping it from being a horror movie. But this movie is about Valeria, a woman who seems desperate to get pregnant and have a baby with her husband, Raul. So much so that in the opening scene, she and her family hike up this giant set of stairs to perform a ritual in front of an even more giant Virgin Mary so that she can conceive. But ritual aside, fortune shines on them because after doing the deed, a short time later, she goes to the doctor and discovers that she is pregnant. Her and Raul are ecstatic. And this is where cracks start appearing for Valeria. Now, she's always been a very independent person and even owns a very successful business making furniture that she loves. However, with the new addition coming, she needs to kind of come to terms with turning her workshop into a baby room, amongst other things. And, hey, it's normal during specific life-changing events that there's going to be some anxiety and consternation that comes with these changes. And so she kind of procrastinates a little bit in the removal of her workshop, which is, of course, to her doctor and husband's dismay. At the same time, she also begins to see this strange, faceless woman that seems to really like snapping bones. And this woman begins to kind of torment her. At first, she's not really sure what to make of it, but she seeks help from her aunt, who is regarded as sort of the black sheep of the family. And she's considered an old spinster in the family because she has no children, she's not married. We see that it actually runs deeper than that, as her aunt is actually gay and also seems to have some very alternative religious beliefs, which I would imagine in a very Catholic-driven Mexico must be difficult. The aunt then takes Valeria to see her friend, and they try to heal her with this ritual of sorts. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. I don't know if it's like maybe of shaman descent or where the origin of this ritual was, but it is suggested that if this particular thing does not work, there is darker magic that they could try. Now, of course, if you've seen a movie ever, then you know that no one mentions something like this if it doesn't actually happen at some point. I mean, it's like Chekhov's spells or something, but that'll be for later. This does seem to work temporarily, and Valeria is happy. She then sets about trying to get her life ready for the baby. She does clean out a workshop and builds the baby's room. However, this kind of resetting of this room does bring about some old memories about a woman from her past that she had a relationship with. When she was a teenager, I think maybe 17, 18, it's tough to tell ages, she was dating a woman and they were planning on leaving Mexico together. In the end, she ended up kind of deciding to go back to school as her parents wanted and leaving the girlfriend behind. Her coming to remember this ends up being a bit of a splinter in her mind as the pregnancy wears on and she continues to experience the appearance of this bone woman. Now, kind of hanging over all of this, Valeria seems to have a type of apprehension to kids in general, which is a little odd given how badly she wanted to have a baby in the beginning of this movie. However, desperate to kind of change that attitude, she volunteers to babysit her niece and nephew as her sister and parents go out for a party. Of course, this goes horribly wrong as the bone woman ends up making an appearance and then chasing them into a bedroom and scaring the hell out of the kids. That said, this is probably the first time that we start to get a sense as to the origin of this bone woman. Okay, so this is where, to talk about this further, I have to kind of get into some spoilers, so skip ahead if you don't want to get this. So in this moment, this also happens to be the start of the shift from a horror movie into a dark character drama. With the disaster at her sister's house, she ends up seeking comfort with this old girlfriend and then ends up sleeping with her, which of course exacerbates her anxiety and confuses her even further. Shortly after that, the baby comes, but things go from bad to worse as clearly Valeria is just not taking to motherhood as she'd kind of hoped. This is also where we start to realize that the bone woman is a manifestation of her growing anxiety and the reluctance to her burying deeper inside who she really is as a person. And of course, the more she fights it, the worse everything gets. Finally, for the health and safety of her child, she must face herself and what she truly wants in order to overcome this. This leads her into that dark magic that was talked about earlier as she ends up seeking out her aunt's friend, who then ends up taking her on this journey of self-discovery and reflection through these very dangerous dark arts, culminating in her accepting who she is deep down, and then of course having to make some very hard choices. Now this is all great in terms of a character arc, but it does kind of rob the story of some agency, because the central conflict ends up shifting from this sort of external presence into a very internal one, and then that kind of takes the teeth out of the horror element in general. And it ends up becoming more of a personal journey than this sort of physical mission for her to overcome. All told, this is a captivating, atmospheric, and well-told story about a woman who buries her identity for so long that it can just no longer be contained. There's great acting, there's solid directing, there's amazing sound design. I mean, first of all, we don't talk enough about sound design in horror movies, but it is so important. And there's some genuinely creepy visuals in the movie, at least in the beginning of the movie. However, the slow transition into this sort of character drama is a bit of a letdown because of how strong it comes out of the gate with its horror premise. Also, I feel like if some of the eventual character moments were teased a bit more in the beginning, maybe it would have made a better transition or made it at least a little bit smoother. I'd give this movie a B, but let me know what you think.